I'd like to introduce Gary Senek, who's our guest today. Gary's been my editor since 1987, so that's what, 30 years? I haven't kicked him out yet. So
that's a good thing.
Yeah, and he's been doing these once-a-term things with me for, I don't know, how many?
At least 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years, yeah. So in terms of a writing tutorial of a bit higher nature than you would get like in freshman and sophomore content. And with a focus on writing economics, hence the little book that we have here and we use. And the fact that he's been editing monthly articles since we started about 99-ish on that.
Yeah.
And then my dissertation you edited. So he's very wise when it comes to writing and editing. And he's done a lot of different things. You were a senior editor at Gale Research, which is a, how would you describe it?
It's an information specialist. Gale published books and electronic materials for schools and libraries. Now they're called Cengage, C-E-N-G-A-G-E, and they used to be in the Pascott building downtown, then they moved to Farmington Hills in about 1997, I think, which is around the time I left.
So Gale got gobbled up by Cengage.
Well, they actually changed their name.
Oh.
They wanted to concentrate more.
So it was Gale Corporation.
It was Gale Research became Cengage, right? Yeah, yes.
Okay, good.
So well, first of all, let me say how great it is to be with all of you. Thank you so much for having me. And just to continue with what John was saying, I worked for this company for 20 years, and then they became very corporate, and I decided to take what I had learned and start my own business. So I did that in '97, and I wrote for national and local publications, but then I developed more of the editing side of my business, and now what I do is to concentrate on editing fiction and nonfiction by authors who are trying to get their books published, so original works of fiction and nonfiction. So what I do is to try to bring their manuscripts up to a professional level, and that's the goal of this writing seminar that John and I are doing with you today. We want to help you to get your term papers and your essay exams up to a professional level, and especially your term papers, because what we feel is that these documents can be used by you in your academic career, and they can be used by you in your professional career. Because you may have other classes where you need to write a term paper. You might be able to use what you do here for those classes, but after you graduate, often when you're applying for jobs, companies require a writing sample.
Oh, yeah, I didn't mention that within 90 days of employment in many professional jobs, that they can, that 89-day limit on whether to let you go and that. That's why they have this writing sample thing somewhere in that time period, so be aware of this.
Yes, or even while you're applying,
oh, yeah.
A lot of companies require a sample just to make sure that you can do the work. So you could use your papers from this class, for that. So that's our goal with you today, is to give you some tools to use in your term papers that could be applied to all the writing that you do, all of the writing that you do both academically and professionally after you graduate.
How many here are seniors or graduate students? Yeah.
A lot, yeah.
Vast majority, so you're going to be facing this if you haven't already.
Yeah. Now, how many are juniors, sophomores, juniors? Okay. Yeah. Well, you'll be being called upon to submit some samples too, I know.
Yeah. Okay, anyways, let's start in on this.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
Well, I would like you to start by talking about the information that we're going to be providing. We realize that you're not English majors, so we're not expecting Shakespeare from your papers. However, what we are looking for, and I'm serving as a consultant on your papers. John is the authority, of course. He's going to be looking at your papers from an economic standpoint, but he asked me to help and just look at them from the writing standpoint. So what we're going to be doing is giving you some tools to use in your writing and also some do's and don'ts. Because what I do with John is to work with him, as he mentioned, on a monthly basis. We together write articles for the Detroit and Oakland County Legal News. And what John does is to provide me with a hard copy.
Yeah. I posted this online this weekend. He marks it up copiously.
I do.
After my third edit, so,
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah, it does.
Doesn't it?
But then we get together and I go over my changes with him, which he incorporates into the document electronically, and then we sit together and read through it, and we find more things. You know, additions, deletions, smoothing out a lot of things. So finally, we have a really concise and clear document, and that's the point for you. That's what we're looking for. We want we want an original document from you that is concise and clear and accurate. So that's the goal.
In the topic of your own choosing, because you know what your interests are,
Right.
within the scope of urban economics.
Right. Right. So really, when you are doing your term papers, you have chosen a topic that is of interest to you. It's something that's really sparked you, you're excited about. So what we would like to see is the reflection of that in your paper. This is something that means something to you. You've done your research, and you know a lot about your topic. So what we're looking for is, what is your original spin on it? What have you seen in your research? What have you learned? What can you apply to your topic? And then present that to us, or to any reader who reads your paper, so that reflects what you've learned and the enthusiasm that you have for your topic. So that's it in a nutshell. That's what we're looking for. Now, the essay exams are a little bit different, because what you're going to be doing there is you have the source material, your book, John's book, the videos that you've watched. So you're going to be looking for consistent themes from that material, reflecting what you learned in class and what you gleaned from the source materials. So that's a little bit different from the term paper, because with the term paper, you choose the topic. And then you're writing about it based on the research that you've done, which is separate from the source material from class, but it's linked in the sense that you are going to be applying what you learned in class and from that source material to your paper as well. But with the paper, it's an amplification in a wider scale. And also, let me say, I know you're doing PowerPoints. Now, PowerPoints are important too, because what you're doing with those is to highlight what you have deemed is the most important information from your term paper. And you're going to be presenting it to the class in a visually arresting manner. However, it's important to note that your PowerPoints aren't your term paper. Your term paper is very much different, because it's a lot more dense, a lot more information, whereas the PowerPoint is just skimming the cream off the top and presenting it in a visual manner. So, see, a lot of writers will make a mistake and they make their term papers exactly like their PowerPoint. So they're very limited in information. So don't make that mistake. They're two different animals entirely.
The PowerPoint presentation should reflect your topic, but given that you know 20 pictures or whatever to be able to show with it, what you say, and again, saying verbally to a group, which is different than scholarly writing, where you can put a little bit more detail and complexity in that. You basically want to say, this is what this is all about. Here's the paper. The paper's the takeaway, but let me tell you the story. Here's the story in 6 minutes and 40 seconds.
Okay. So let me just read to you something that I think will help you. It's a summary of really what we're looking for here. In your term papers and your essay exams, write about your topic in an original, clear, and concise manner that convinces your readers that you are knowledgeable about your subject as well as impassioned about it. And I'll repeat that for you. Write about your topics in an original, clear, and concise manner that convinces your readers that you are knowledgeable about your subject as well as impassioned about it. And that's really it. That's really the goal here. So once you've chosen the subject of your term paper, which should, again, reflect your personal interest, you're ready to do an outline. And the way that we suggest doing an outline is to use what we call the inverted pyramid approach. Inverted pyramid. So just imagine a triangle and then turn it upside down. So the big end is at the top and the small end is at the bottom. So what you're doing with that is you're taking your information, your themes, the biggest points, and putting them at the top. And then you're going in descending order and listing more important themes, but a little bit less than the major points until you get to the bottom. So everything that you're including is important, but it's going in descending order of importance. And that's how you write your paper. So
it works.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's what you do, isn't it, when you write your outlines?
Yeah, no, I don't write them. I do them in my head first.
Oh, you do them in your head?
Like
Okay.
Mozart used to compose everything and just dump it.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
So I walk around for 3 or 4 days, come up with what it was.
Let it flow.
Yeah, but that's more years of experience, I guess.
Sure it is.
So yeah, I mean, don't feel constrained about writing out the outline. That's perfectly fine.
Oh, absolutely. And also it would be helpful, once you have the general theme of what you want to write about in your paper, to subdivide it, because you've got your sections, you've got your introduction, your development, and your summary conclusion. So you could do an inverted pyramid for each one. So by doing that, you will make sure that you cover all the information that you want to include in each section, and you go point by point. And that will really help, because then you won't be all over the place when you're writing your paper. And that's where a lot of writers fall down, because they don't have a focus. They're too diffuse. They're hither and yon. And that makes it really confusing when we're reading the paper or anybody else is reading the paper.
Here's a question for you. By habit, I tend to do what we call the development section first.
Ah, okay.
And then once I, clear out all the garbage and get the stuff in, then I look at, and then I go back and I do the introduction.
Ah, okay.
And then, the conclusion, the takeaway.
Yeah.
Especially in the article, because, it has to be some kind of takeaway for the specific audience of readers and the legal.
Exactly. Well, I think that is a really workable way to do it. I think it's a really good idea. Because you, as your research, you've done your research, you're researchers, you are the researchers. So you've done all this work about your topic, you know it well, so maybe it would be easier to write about your topic, in the development section first. Try that.
It's sort of like intro is, this is what I'm going to do, and then the development is, this is what I'm doing, and the conclusion summary is, this is what I have done, and this is why it's important.
Right. So let's talk about the introduction. And whether you do your development first or your introduction first, this is a good format to use in writing an introduction. What we suggest is to use what's called thesis sentences. That's THESIS sentences. And that's one or two sentences that tell your reader exactly what he or she is going to be seeing in your paper. So let me say that again. That's it. Those sentences, one or two sentences, tell your reader exactly what he or she will be seeing in your paper. And let me give you some examples. In this paper, comma, I will show how, blah, blah, blah. In this paper, comma, I will demonstrate the economic theory of blah, blah, blah.
It sounds rather plain and, it's just not like Hemingway or something like that.
Right.
But it works, and it also gives you a very good solid framework, foundation to then build off of.
Yes.
And
Let me give you a couple of real-life examples. In this paper, comma, I will show how the government of the city of Detroit misused its funds during the Kilpatrick era, thus leading to the city's bankruptcy. So that's one example. Another would be, in this paper, comma, I will explain how the economic system in the United States has declined since 2008. Or a more current example, in this paper, comma, I will demonstrate how the Duggan administration has bolstered the economic quality of the city of Detroit by using these methods, and then outline what the methods are. So you see that each one of those is very specific. It says exactly what the paper will include and how it will do that. So in your development section, you want to make sure that you cover all the points that you listed in your thesis sentences. So don't leave anything out. Go back to your thesis sentences, make sure that you covered everything. Now, also in your introduction, once you've given us your thesis sentences, then give any background information in the introduction that will help to bolster your introduction. Especially if you're writing about economic subjects, which you will be, you can say, give a little history, maybe, or a little background information about your subject, and then get into the development, which is the meat of your paper.
And also the introductory section should be written as non-technical as possible.
Yeah.
Simply because your readership may be rather wide. And then, if you're getting into highly technical economic theory principles, and then, the detail comes later on. It's up front. Make it accessible.
Yes.
Let pass the grandmother test.
Right.
Assuming that your grandmother doesn't have a Ph.D. in economics, right? Your grandma can read it and understand it.
Now, I don't have any background in economics except what I've gleaned from working with John for these years, which is actually a lot, but I'm not an economist. So when I read your papers, I really want to know what you're talking about. So it would be really helpful if you're talking about an economic subject, which you will be, to explain it. Give the full information, the beginning, the middle, and the end, Don't just assume that your reader will know what you're talking about. Because I don't know what all the theories are.
Well, one reason that you're so valuable is because you don't have a background in economics. And so you can ask intelligent questions that any number of readers might ask, where I might go into, too much theory kind of stuff.
Right.
It's like, well, don't you know, you just take the, the production function, you take the first and second derivatives, and where the second derivative is, blah, 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 that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That, you sort of like, okay.
Yeah, my eyes glaze over, and then I say, John, what does this mean in plain English? So then he can distill the theory and make it palatable for the average reader, which would be me. So, yeah, and that's exactly what we're asking of you with your papers and essay exams. Even though John is the final voice and is the economist, still, like he said, other people like me are going to be reading your papers, so and especially too, if you want to use them in your professional life, a lot of the CEOs or the HR people or whomever might not have the economic background that you do, and so they will need to know what you're talking about.
Working in a corporation or institution or something of that sort, we have people who have business degrees. Well, the curriculum in the business school is you got to take principles of macro, principles of micro, and I think there might be one other thing, which is not really very third radical. Okay.
Yeah.
They may be skilled in accounting, they may be skilled in marketing, they may be skilled in any number of other fields, but the chances are they haven't taken more than their required courses, and their motivation was to get through the course and pass it so they could go on. And so be aware of this.
Exactly. Yeah. Let me give you some questions that you can ask yourself in writing your development section. Because you've done your introduction, you've told us what your paper is going to be about and how you're going to go about explaining. Okay? Now you're in your development. Ask yourself these kinds of questions. What are the highlights of the material that I read? What are the most salient points? What are the major themes? What elements are the most important to the history, the current status, and the future of my subject? Again, the history, the current status, and the future. You want to look at all three. What things made the greatest impression on me as I did my research? Which of these reflect what I learned in class? So here's that connection between what you learned here in this room and what you've learned outside this room in doing your research for your term paper. Which of these reflect what I learned from my research? Okay, what have I learned from my research that really changed my opinion of my subject? Did something really jump out at you and you went, whoa, this is really cool. I didn't know this. Because there are those aha moments in your research, and you want to talk about them in your paper. What did I learn changed my opinion? Did you have an opinion going in that was changed by what you learned? If so, why? Tell us. What did I learn that spoke especially to me? And that's really it. What spoke especially to you in doing your research? What were those things that really connected with you, that really resonated with you? Those are the kinds of things that we want you to be writing about in your paper. And also, it's really important to write in your own words. Here's where a lot of writers make a mistake. Forgive us one line of original writing, and then the next, like 3 to 6 sentences, are direct quotes from a source. please don't be one of those writers. Because that defeats the whole purpose. We don't want the source material. We can read that on our own. We want your writing. So what you need to do is to paraphrase your source material. Put it in your own words. Don't just quote big sections. If you do need to use a quote, limit it to one sentence or at the most 2 sentences, okay? And make sure that whatever quote you use bolsters your original point.
In a 10-page paper, what number of quotes would you say would be the best?
Oh man, in a 10-page paper, I would say at the most 3 or 4. And that's a lot.
Of 1 or 2 sentences?
Yeah, 1 or 2 sentence quotes, yeah. And again, make sure they are really the salient points, really the knockout points, and that you then use them to bolster your point, your original point. Otherwise, it's like, okay, I could just go with the article or the book and read it. It defeats the purpose of your term paper or your essay exam.
And is putting quotes in are at least academically honest, because you're, attributing it to whoever. It's paraphrasing is an art, but it's, unless you understand paraphrasing, you get in that thin ice between paraphrasing and plagiarism.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And I don't know, remember that one student I had years ago that basically just plagiarized Future Shock.
I remember that.
And, oh God,
bad.
that was a mess. And she had to go in front of the, whatever the review board is, which had faculty and the student senate. And she was supposed to graduate, but they gave her a 0 for the course and also barred her from graduating for an additional year. Yeah, so plagiarism is treated seriously. I don't know if you've run into this before. I don't that often, but a lot of times because I tell that story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And because there are a lot of papers already out there on the internet, that you could just download, but I mean that's not what we want to see.
No.
Because you want to pick a subject that excites you and write about it. I mean that's not that hard.
You want to get more out of the paper than a grade.
Yeah, you do, because we want
this
this
is a chance to have something that you can use
professionally.
Yeah, professionally for interview situations or just as a foundation for something. You get a job because you're interested in the particular subject that you're writing on, and they say, well, this is great. I know you've done some work on this before. Can you give us 30 pages by next Wednesday? You're not starting from scratch.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, just as we were saying, limit the number of quotes, we ask you please not to include footnotes in your paper. I mean,
it eats up too much space.
Yeah, it really does.
So a separate page on the back that's not part of the 10, okay? Separate reference sheet, bibliography, whatever you want to call it, list of URLs, right? As a separate sheet.
But again, we ask you to please limit footnotes. It's very difficult for us to go back and forth between what you footnoted and the source. We want to just be able to read your words. So again, please just paraphrase.
A better way to do this is just professional writing. Let's say somebody by the name of Smith in 1975 has something to say. So you could say, if it's the only Smith that you're going to be citing, right? Let's do Smythe. Okay, Smythe, in his, her 1976 book, states that you don't have to do a quote. You can paraphrase, because a lot of times it'll be, this much material, and you only want this much, but you gotta get the salient points out of a page or two into like one paragraph. Okay, this is a way to do it, and it solves the whole problem of giving credit to the person who had the original stuff, but your work is taking it and digesting it for your reader.
And that's also a good way, because then by saying so-and-so states that, you can distill the information that Smythe or whomever else is the writer said.
Then the bibliography you have Smythe, J.R., then the name of the article, the name of the book, publication date, all that kind of stuff on the bib page, reference page.
Sir?
So would we still have to do an in-text APA citation for that, like, after you write that, like your Smythe comment 1976, or do you not have to do that?
You can use whatever you're comfortable with, because I'm familiar with all the standard ones. I think we still, in the department, use Chicago style.
Yeah, Chicago Manual of Style.
Yeah, this
Are you all familiar with
but
that?
APA is fine, I'm not, we're on Grade John, which method, but just so, the idea is to, whatever style you're using, make it easy for the person to then track it down.
And make it consistent.
Yeah.
Don't switch between
That
the styles.
gets a little.
Yeah. Okay, now, let's talk about summary conclusion. For me, this is the make it or break it part of your paper. You've given us an introduction, you've given us a development where you've talked about your subject in detail. Now, in the summary conclusion, you bring it home with a bang. And how do you do that? You write about your subject from your personal viewpoint. You tell us what you learned. You talk about your subject, as I mentioned, the history, the current status, and the future, and you make some recommendations based on what you have read and what you have learned, what you have observed. That's what we want to see. We want to see your creative look at your subject. What have you drawn from your research? What have you seen? What have you noted? What can you suggest? Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. Let me give you some possible questions you can ask yourself. What have I learned from the experience of researching my topic? What comments can I make about it? What is my subject doing right? What is my subject doing wrong? If so, why? What are they doing or not doing? Sometimes they're not doing anything, and they could be doing something different. So, what do you see that they're doing right and wrong, and what could they do to improve? Those are the kinds of things that I would say really make a paper good, when you can say those things, because that tells us that you've really thought about it, you've really made some conscious decisions, and you're making some good suggestions. I think that that's very valuable. So based on my research, what can I project or predict about my subject? What can I say about the current approach? Is it working? If not, why not? What would I suggest instead? And that's the key. The you. Tell us what you think about your subject.
You've done all the work.
Yeah?
You've been to the lectures, you've read the books.
Yeah.
Something, have some opinion, some viewpoint.
Right.
Bring out. So, pause for a second here. This is the structure of the paper. Cover sheet that has the title of your paper on, the date, what class it is, your name, okay. At the other end is the reference bibliography, blah, 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 okay. And then you have 10 pages of text, okay, written. Now, if you have a graph or a map or something else that is truly relevant, then this is optional kind of thing. This all goes into an appendix. Okay, graphs, pictures, maps, whatever it happens to be. Nothing embedded in the text, okay? So what we're saying is the intro should be 1 to a max of 1.5 pages. The summary conclusion. Right? Should be 1, but not more than 1.5.
However, if I may interject here, John, the best papers for me are the ones where the summary conclusion does use the full space. Because a lot of writers will fall down at the end. They'll give a really good intro, really good development, and then
2 paragraphs.
when they get their conclusion, get to the conclusion, they don't say anything, or it's done in just like a half a page or something. And it's like, oh man, this was going so well, and then they fell down.
I would say not less than 1 page, but because you have to budget the pages, not more than 1.5.
Yeah, but still use that space.
Same thing with the intro, which means you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or if you use up the half page at each end, you have 7 to 8 pages for the development. Okay? Which means you're doing like 250 words per page. I'm thinking, Times New Roman 12-point font, double space, 1-inch margins. 250 words a page times 7 or 8, and that's what you got to work with.
Okay, oh yes.
Is it possible, everything that you've broken it down, is it possible we can have that put on whiteboard, where it's broken down? Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's written out in the syllabus,
Okay.
but, I think a visual might be useful.
Before I move into talking about some of the specific do's and don'ts of writing, I want to just give you a quick summary of what we've talked about thus far. Talking about your conclusion, the summary conclusion, it should be informed and thoughtful. Leave your readers with a bang. Leave them with a positive impression. Leave them with the wow factor that, yeah, this person really knows what he or she is talking about, was really creative in presenting some suggestions about his or her subject.
A strong takeaway.
Yeah, strong takeaway. That's what I always do with you, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I hate doing that.
I know. He always leaves, not always, but often doesn't do it, and then we do it together because,
It changes.
Yeah.
As after he gets done editing, it's like, I have to rewrite it anyways.
Yeah.
There's some basic questions that you might even ask me.
Oh, I do, often I do. What I ask John is, okay, from what you got in his introduction and development, what can your audience take away? What specifically would speak to them in their businesses? Because they're generally attorneys.
Or people in law offices, most people don't read the legal news. Unless they're attorneys or somebody within the office on their staff. The question, which is the redundant question, is, okay, how is this relevant to attorneys?
Right.
How can they use this?
Right.
Right? How is it valuable to them?
So John writes very very varied articles in his subject. I mean, he's an economist, but he's writing about healthcare, he's writing about the political situation, he's writing about history, and just to name 3 subjects. And often, his information is very esoteric. So I'm reading it, I'm going, okay, this is great, but how does it speak to attorneys? So then he has to think about it. How does it speak to my audience? And then together we come up with really specific points that an attorney can take away and use in his or her business. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, what we're asking from you with your papers is you're writing about a specific subject that you're excited about. What can you say to a general audience about that subject?
That's why suggesting that you have a writing partner in class where you can read each other's and ask these kinds of questions. I mean, you don't have to have a highly skilled editor to ask, how does this relate to your audience, blah, blah, blah. But it helps to be able to sound it off with somebody else.
Does, definitely.
Absolutely. Get a little writing group, 2 people, 3 people, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you know what, I see what you were talking about in our paper. I think I know what I wanted to say, what I would like to see on PowerPoint. The questions that you said we should ask ourselves.
Yes.
I would like to see that we kind of, so I can reflect back to, okay, if you put this in the context of my paper.
Sure. I can give those to John, and then you can put them on blank.
Okay.
Right. Now, what we're looking for, just to summarize, content, clarity, approach, and presentation. Have you followed all of the instructions? Is the text solid? Is it well researched? Does it make sense? Are the economic principles sound? Are they correct? Is the writing free of grammatical errors, spelling errors? Does the writer draw a strong conclusion? Is the writer impassioned about his or her subject? Those are the kinds of things.
If you're bored with it, your reader's going to be bored with it.
Yeah. Right. So, give that in-depth analysis and give it some verve. Give it some excitement. Because you're excited about your subject. We want to be excited too. That's the point.
It's kind of like when you go to a bar or some other venue and there's a band up there that's played this one song, which is a simple song like 1,000 times, and they're bored, and you watch them, I'm bored.
Yeah, definitely. Then that becomes like wallpaper.
Yeah.
You're not even paying attention to the band after that. You're just talking with your friends or whatever, and they're up there playing, and you don't care.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad. As musicians, both of us are musicians, and we played together for many years. It's
enthusiasm.
Yeah, it makes a difference. Now, I wanted to say this: that the writing style that you use in your term paper and your exams is very important. A writer can follow instructions to the letter, provide good, solid information in the development section, but fill the paper with spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, sentence fragments, misuse of punctuation, or not even including any punctuation. I've seen that. And then other, like sentence structure problems, that kind of thing. These things can be rectified by using grammar check, spell check, on your Word function on your computer. Please do that before you submit your paper. It makes a world of difference.
And have somebody else read it. If you need to buy them a 6-pack or take them out to dinner, whatever it is. I mean,
buy them a pizza.
Yeah, somebody that will give you, it's like, this is good, but I'm lost what this means. It might be just a matter of punctuation.
Yeah, that makes a real difference.
Yeah.
If you read aloud your paper before you even give it to somebody else to read, you will be amazed at what jumps out at you. Because if you read it aloud and you stop at something that doesn't make sense, you're doing that verbally. If somebody reads the paper with his or her eyes, they will stumble over the same thing. So definitely read aloud your paper, even before you give it to anybody else.
That's why I suggest, having, a writing partner or a small group to be able to do that. It's like reading it aloud, and you're the only person in the room with the exception of your dog or your cat, isn't the same as having a human being. So I'll read out loud, and Gary's there, and not only am I reacting, he's reacting.
Right.
And, it's like, oh, this sounds awful.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like,
Or, okay, this is a good point, but it needs to be amplified in order to really make sense. So then we have to go to Google or, something like
so
that.
versus coming from, let's just put, a little bit more meat to it.
Yeah.
Because it's too thin that, you're just tossing out an idea, but there's no content behind it. So.
Exactly. Now, if you're not an experienced writer or English is not your native language, we would suggest running your paper over to the writing clinic before you submit it, have somebody take a look at it.
Which I told them they really need to, if they haven't done it already, contact them because they get filled up. They have a limited staff and limited budget to make contact with them. Okay?
I want to give you some specific examples of consistent errors that writers make in their papers, as well as give you some suggestions on how to avoid these errors. If you apply these, trust me, your papers will be 1,000,000 times better. So these are in no particular order, by the way. Use serial commas, S-E-R-I-A-L, S-E-R-I-A-L, commas.
Also known as Oxford comma.
Yeah, the word serial comes from series, which means that every element that you include in a sentence should have a comma after it. For example, if I say, I am enjoying being here, comma, will be leaving for home after this class, comma, and will be working then, period. That's 3 elements in my sentence. And each one of them should have a comma after it.
Let's see, Donald Trump invited 2 prostitutes to the party. George W. Bush and Bill Clinton.
Oh yeah, that's right, yeah.
Now, depending on where you put the comma, it can mean 2 completely different things.
Like those guys are the prostitutes without the comma, is what it turns out to be.
Yeah.
Which,
Well, with the comma, they're just all 4 people invited.
right. So see, commas really do make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you also want to put your comma after your introductory phrase. Like if you say, however, blah, 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 in this paper, comma, I will demonstrate, you need a comma. Now, here's an example. Before the existence of modern society, comma, the people of the world, blah, blah, blah. So, definitely stick a comma after your introductory statement. Avoid starting sentences with and, to, or but. And, to, or but. That's just sloppy.
Yeah. However, don't need but. Right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Just skip and, however, just make it a declarative sentence. Make that, start with the subject of your sentence. And instead of to, start with in order to.
Otherwise, it can get confusing.
It really does, yeah. Now, say you're interviewing someone for your paper. We need to know who that person is, what their profession is, when you spoke to this person. Okay? So,
I think I mentioned I'm allowing you 1 interview as a source, like minimum of 5 sources. One of the minimum of 5 can be an interview with somebody who is knowledgeable.
right. And that does add a nice touch to your paper if you've got somebody else's opinion who is an authority on the subject about which you're writing. it adds real credence to what you're writing about.
Now, there's also a fringe benefit to that, that if you're looking, let's say there's a particular field or place that you want to work, and, you know, most people, if you say, oh, I would like to interview for your company, blah, 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 and say, oh, yeah, okay, but fill out the form, blah, blah, blah. It's different when you say, you know, I've read some of the things that you've written and know of your work. Would it be possible to come in or sit down with you, maybe even over the phone, like for 15 minutes, because I'm writing a paper for this, you know, senior level class about and I would really like to get a quote or some kind of interview from you.
And then, once you're done with your paper, you can give that person a copy of your paper. And that will be a very good thing for him or her to have, because it's a feather in that person's cap, like, oh man, I was quoted in this student's really good paper, and then you made a connection that you could use professionally. You know, if you contact that person again, you're looking for work, you know, that you can say, you know, I'm the writer of the term paper that you appeared in, and that person will, oh yeah, right, yeah, I remember you.
Yeah, the professional term for that is called an informational interview, so you're
Yes.
requesting an informational interview from someone.
Exactly. Now, if you include dates, they don't have apostrophes, like decades. You say 1920s, 1990s, 2000s. Do not make it like 1920S. I'm sorry, 1920 apostrophe S. It's just 1920S. 1990S.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people do it as a possessive, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not. And the same if you have CEOs, it's CEOS, not CEO apostrophe S. DVDs, it's not DVD apostrophe S, it's not CD apostrophe S, you've got CDs.
It's just plural.
Yeah, because you don't want to make them possessive.
Comma is possessive, so
Yeah.
if it's not possessive, I suppose that, you know, this CD's back cover.
Yeah, that
would be
possessive. But that's different than,
I have a stack of CDs.
yeah, then it's just CDS. Is that clear to everybody, the difference there?
And
Okay.
these are, again, this is our short list or medium list of over the last 10+ years
Yeah.
of what we've seen.
Yeah, yeah, these are all real life
We
examples.
like to mention it because we see it every turn.
Exactly.
So,
Now, any punctuation that you have, commas, periods, whatever, if you have a quote, put that punctuation inside the quote mark, the last quote mark, rather than outside of it. Now, a lot of you will be using URLs in your papers, in the bibliography or the reference sheet, whatever you want to call it. When you list a URL, please give the full information about the site. Don't just give us the address, because it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything to me or to John when we look at that.
take the time.
So you want to put the author of the material that you're quoting, if the article has a title, or if it's a book that you're quoting from, and the date of the site. If there isn't a date of the site, just put the date that you downloaded the information. Oh, if it's a book,
or
oh,
a
yeah.
journal. Or
Yeah, a book or a magazine,
Yeah.
you want to have the author's name, first and last.
Hard copy stuff.
Yeah. You want to have the title of the book or the title of the magazine, and that will be in italics, and then a comma, and that goes within the italic, and then the publisher of the book or the magazine, and then
The publication.
your publication date. Yeah. Now, if you have the word to with a verb, like to understand, don't split the infinitive. That means that you've taken the word to, kept it over here, stuck other words in the middle, and then had the verb understand. like to more fully understand, should instead be to understand more fully. You want to keep to and the verb together. So many people make a mistake with that. And you'll even see that in magazines and books now.
Split infinitive.
Yeah, split infinitive.
Split infinitive is like that. To go, to write, to sleep. And if you break that and put another word in between, that's what you do, that's breaking an infinitive. And sometimes, it's still intelligible, but a lot of times it will get confusing. So it's, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or helping verbs. Same thing
Oh,
with
yeah,
helping verbs.
absolutely.
Don't throw an adverb in between the helping verb and the verb.
Exactly.
Same reasons.
Good. Now, if you have quoted someone, like John mentioned Smythe up there, please give the person's whole name in your text and identify his or her profession or what they're known for. Like, for example,
The first time that you mentioned.
Yeah, the first time.
And after that, you just use their last
their
name.
last name. Like, here's an example. Stuart Rosenthal, comma, a professor of economics at Wayne State University, comma, said, and then a quote from Rosenthal. But that tells us who Rosenthal is. Otherwise, we don't know. And the credibility is lost.
Is he
Not
your
mine.
mailman? That just happens to have some opinions, or is it somebody that might have a little bit more credence in the particular subject that you're writing about?
Exactly.
That's the reason.
Exactly. Now, if you have words that modify a noun, such as 30-year loan, mortgage-backed securities, please insert a hyphen between the words that are modifying the noun. Like 30-year, mortgage, and then mortgage-backed securities. Like,
Backed security. I mean, a lot of times you'll see it written like this, and if you know what you're reading, if this is part of your daily literature, you know what you're talking about, and then they can just use was and MBS. Are they three different things?
right.
Or is it, this is the kind of security it is? It's a mortgage-backed security. So this kind of thing that helps to clarify for people who aren't buried into the same literature that you are. This happens in economics all the time. You get in your particular field, and it's like, it's like, oh yeah, it's that stuff. We all know what that is, and then you put down MBS, or you put down EIO, whatever, and everybody's going to know what you're talking about. Within a small group of people, which may be really small.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it also helps to keep your writing looking professional. Like, if, this might seem like really minimal stuff, but it really does. When you add it all up, this is what makes writing professional and gives you that edge above your competitors or other students, that kind of thing.
Now, here's a way to save space in writing. Is if you're going to mention this a number of times, after the first time that you mention it, put it like that. That way, you've identified this long term, which is also known as AKA, right, and MBS, and then you can, next paragraph down, and of all the MBS that we have looked at, okay, that's fine, because you identified what this is, you defined it in the first mention of
Good. Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Now here's a really important one. This will really give you some leverage if you do this right. Don't say which when you mean that. So many writers don't know the difference between which and that. They'll say which when they mean that, and that when they mean which. Here is the definition of each. The word which refers to one of many, while the word that refers to the only one in question. Let me say that again. The word which refers to one of many. The word that refers to the only one in question. Here's some examples. This term paper, comma, which is one of 30, comma, is very good. So you see, which refers to the one of 30, so it's more than one. The other one is, the term paper that I will be writing will get an A. So that refers to the only term paper in question. The term paper that I will be writing, not the term paper which I will be writing, because the which refers to one of many.
It's like, these are the glasses that I am wearing. And these are the eyeglasses that many people at Wayne State are wearing.
Yeah,
There's which and that.
which and that. Is that clear to everyone, the difference between the two?
It's it seems like
One
kind
of
of
all,
like,
that is one of all, right?
I beg your pardon?
You said that is one of all.
That is the only one,
Yeah, it's
whereas
that.
which is one of many.
or it's maybe a defined group of something.
Yes.
Which is always going to be that group.
Yeah,
But then the group becomes the that.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, loose and lose, L-O-O-S-E versus L-O-S-E. Okay, a lot of people misuse those two words. They'll, here's an example. The stock market will lose, L-O-O-S-E, lots of money this year, rather than the market will lose, L-O-S-E. Money loose is when your clothes don't fit, they're too loose.
Yeah,
When you lose something, then it's diminished. There's the difference.
I'm not sure where this started popping up, but it wasn't just a one-time.
Oh,
thing.
no, it's been really consistent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm not sure where it came from, but.
I don't know, but it's pervasive now.
Yeah.
So don't be one of those that misuses them.
If you read it in the newspaper, doesn't mean it's spelled correctly or used correctly.
Oh, no. No, unfortunately, there's been a dumbing down in journalism. Lots of sentence fragments, lots of misspellings, and loose and lose are used in
And it has to do with a good economic reason. Budget. They've slashed the budget, they have gotten rid of a lot of their staff who otherwise would go through all of this. When was the last time our monthly column for the legal news was actually edited?
Probably about a year or two after we started submitting the articles.
I guess so,
Yeah.
maybe like before 2000.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah, because, say, one thing about publishers, if they don't have to do any work, they like that. And if they find somebody that gives them a finished product that doesn't need all kinds of editing work to make it fit in their publication, which one do you think they'll choose?
And a lot of publishers will only accept works that don't need editing because they know they don't have to do any work. They can just start making money off the book.
Yeah.
So a lot of publishers don't even have editors anymore.
And they have time deadlines too, of course, so, they gotta get it formatted, find the space for it, and fill up the other space with other articles or advertisements. It takes time, right?
It does. Another thing that will really help you in your papers is to make sure to include your section headings. Because a lot of writers will just write a straight paper without those headings. And
Where does the introduction begin? Well, it begins right at the top of the page, of the first page. Where does it end? Well, it ends where the next section, which is development, starts.
yeah, so when we're reading papers and there's no section headings, we don't know when the intro ends and the development begins, and vice versa for the summary and
I
the end of
take points
development.
off for that.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, I take points off, because it makes it very confusing.
Exactly. Okay, another like loose and lose, or which and that, it's and its, IT apostrophe S versus ITS. ITS. A lot of people make mistakes with that, because ITS is the contraction of it is, while ITS is the possessive. So, it's a beautiful day is IT apostrophe S, because it's the contraction of it is a beautiful day. It's good writing impressed me is
Possessive.
possessive, because it refers to the writing. Everybody get that? Yes? Okay.
And when in doubt about a contraction, don't use contraction.
Right.
It is.
And that's actually a good point, John, because we want your papers to be as professional as they can be. So it's more professional to spell out your contractions in a formal paper than it is to use the contractions. Contractions are for more informal usage, like the way we talk.
And in...
Yeah, you want to keep your papers formal
Mm-hmm.
in the writing. All right, word repetition is a place where a lot of writers fall down. You don't want to repeat words, especially adjectives, adverbs. If you've used the same descriptive word once in a paragraph, find another word for the next sentence that you use it in. Like, here's an example. An important field because it uses issues important to blah, blah, blah. The writer used important and important in the same sentence.
Yeah, that's good. What's the rule of thumb, like maybe
Every couple of sentences.
every couple of
Every, like,
sentences,
two-
five
every-
five lines apart?
5 lines apart, yeah.
It's gonna...
You know, go to the thesaurus function on Word and try to find another word that means the
Now,
same
you
thing.
can also vary the structure, like important and importantly are related, but they are two different words, so...
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, as I mentioned, please do check spelling, and that would apply to proper names as well. You would be shocked at how many writers turn in term papers and they've misspelled the names of the people to whom they're referring, whether they are the writers of the source material or famous figures. Like, for example, I will never forget one writer who spelled Barack Obama Obamma throughout his paper. Now, come on, you know.
Or O apostrophe Obama.
Yeah, that's true, like he was Irish. You know, no. And there's another person who wrote paper referring to Hart Plaza, you know, downtown Detroit, as H-E-A-R-T, like your heart, rather than H-A-R-T. Now,
Really?
yeah.
And this
oh,
is
yeah.
here at Wayne State in this course.
Yeah, I mean,
thought it was H-A-R-T.
Yeah.
it's H-A-R-T.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
named after
They're
Philip
Philip Hart,
Hart.
yeah. And again, your verb tenses, make them correct. Like, here's an example of a sentence that actually was submitted. Housing prices have rose since last year. Now, rose is incorrect because it's past tense. You want to say have risen.
This is present
Because it's
tense.
present
Have,
tense.
the first verb, the have, defines the tense.
Right, exactly.
So if you have done something or other, that means it's in the present. And generally also, when citing other authors, even they may even be dead, okay? But you normally would write, rather than they stated in their book, or they wrote in their book, no, they state.
Yes.
Or they write that, because the book lives on.
Yeah, that's a really good rule of thumb. If you're, saying something about a book, say states, present tense. Yeah, that's a really good
The
point.
book has a life of its own.
It
They
does.
live in immortality.
They
to
do.
Their book.
They do. Or infamy, depending on what.
Depending on,
Yeah. All right, make sure your papers are long enough. And then we've seen a lot of papers that are short, and then you get
Or
bogged down.
too long.
Or too long, that's true.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like 10 pages of text. Not less than 9.5, not more than 10.5.
Make sure your papers have a cover sheet. A lot of writers don't turn in a cover sheet. You want the name, the title of your paper, the class, and the date of submission. Now here's another really important one. If there are just 2 elements in your sentence, you don't need to put a comma in there. Only put a comma if there's more than 2 elements. For example, the sentence, all of this supports the process of urbanization and the global economy. Okay, you've only got 2 elements, the process of urbanization and the global economy. You don't need a comma after urbanization.
Only where there's 3 or more. And then pay attention to the serial.
Right.
Oxford comma.
Now, you also don't need a comma before a book title or a video title. Like, in the video conceptualizing real estate, Dr. Sase says, blah, blah, blah. You don't need a comma after video. Just go right into the title. But you do need a comma after conceptualizing real estate, the actual title of the video. Because then, that's your introductory phrase. Is that clear to everybody? What the difference is? You need the comma after the title of the video, because then you're saying Dr. Sase says blah, blah, blah. But you don't need it in the video conceptualizing real estate.
If you took everything out and you just had, where does the actual statement begin?
Yeah, that's it.
And then, if you're going to put something before it, it needs to generally be separated with a comma before you get to the statement.
Right. Make sure that your sentences make sense. A lot of writers will turn in papers and you read their sentence and you go, huh? What does this mean? Like, here's an example. Banks began to lend money of housing through credit. Banks began to lend money of housing through credit. I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means?
Maybe they meant banks began lending money for home mortgages?
Probably, yeah. Money of
That'd
housing.
be my guess,
Yeah.
but then I'm guessing.
Yeah, we have to. If you have to guess, it's not good because it takes away from your credibility. So just make sure your sentences make sense.
You lose the fluency.
Yeah, you do. So again, if you read your paper aloud or give it to somebody else to read, that will help. Because the person will go, what? What does this mean? Okay, numbers. If you got numbers in your text, you want to spell out all the numbers from 1 through 99. From 100 on, you can just use the numeral. But professionals spell out numbers from 1 through 99.
That's the most professional to
Yeah.
spell out, but now it's,
Well, 1 through 10,
yeah.
you see that a lot, but for our purposes, 1 through 99
Yeah.
is the most professional.
That's the most professional, so be aware of it, but a lot of places, it's still 1 through 10.
Right.
10's easy to write, it's only 3 letters.
Exactly, yeah, that's right.
And then, using numbers beyond has become more typical. That even changed, about half a decade ago.
Yeah, it
It was
did.
like anything less than 50, which was kind of like a really odd rule that was probably difficult for a lot of people to remember.
Exactly.
Yeah, the traditional one, and if you're in a situation, and it depends who you're working for, perhaps, and if they're old school and they rate 88 as 2 numbers, what's this? Don't know how to spell 88?
That could happen,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've run into this with students, a number, econ is a good major for those thinking going to law school, and I've had students who've gone to law school, gone out there, and, they say, yeah, it's like living in the Middle Ages, the way they want me to write.
Okay, so this should help you if you encounter anybody like that. Okay, another thing that will be helpful, if you include a book or magazine in the text of your paper, please include it in the bibliography or reference sheet. So a lot of writers will just include one, but it won't appear in the other. So you want to have both.
Now, the book or the magazine is in italics, but if it's an article within the magazine, or if it's a article like in like a chapter, it's
Yes.
a collection of pieces that are in the book.
Right, or an individual essay or something.
Yeah,
with
something
them.
like that.
Yeah.
That gets in quote marks.
Right,
So what's within something else gets quote marks. The thing that's published in the base thing gets italics.
is that clear to everybody, what the difference is?
Because people get lost in that.
Yeah,
And don't, so you don't know, oh, is this a book or an article?
yeah, exactly.
And if it's an article, where is it from?
All right.
Yeah.
All right, another thing that writers do a lot is they'll say a couple rather than a couple of. You know, if a lot of people speaking will just say, you know, I bought a couple candy bars out of the vending machine. No, that's very
That's conversational,
informal.
that's fine.
Yeah, but in your paper, you
Writing.
want to say a couple of things to address. Yes,
What about the phrase "as well as"?
as well as, you would use it after and. So I would say, let's see, what would be a good example? I bought apples and oranges as well as some milk. Because it's redundant to say, I bought apples and oranges and milk.
Yeah. it's
So
a way
it
to-
varies your sentence that way.
So you use it after "and."
After and, yeah.
Then you have a pair or a group of things like, you know, A, B, and C, and there's some other things that are relevant, comma, as well as,
Yeah.
And
yeah, one.
Okay. If you've got historical designations or events, like World War II, the Great Depression, that kind of thing, please capitalize them.
Yeah, they're events.
Yeah, that's really important. Okay, you want to, going back to the informality that people use in their papers sometimes, you want to really keep your language sophisticated. Two statements from previous papers that we read were kind of blew us away were, I worked my ass off and that was bullshit. Honest. So don't be that writer, you know, keep it
Professional.
Yeah, professional. Because again, you're going to be submitting your papers hopefully
Yeah.
to a CEO or somebody who can hire you, and if they read that, they're going to go, oh.
Now, in
okay.
private conversations, they may swear like an army person.
Yeah.
Remember that focus hope we had?
Oh, yes.
Oh, who's
Ken?
Sergeant Major of Iraq?
Oh, yeah, that guy, Tom. Yeah.
And the general, U.S. general was in that day.
Yes.
What's his name? They had, you know, cameras and everything, and they both put their hands over themselves. They're talking like military people to one another,
Yeah.
and covering up their microphones.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you know, what people say in private or behind closed doors, that's one thing, but, you know, if it's in the paper, it's open to the public, and there is, and I was saying in the last year, the standards of society have been declining at a very rapid rate, it seems, but, yeah, there is propriety that we like to maintain for professional work because, you know, next year or 4 years from now, who knows, it may be a complete reversal, and if this document lives on in time, you know, keeping it on par with what the long run higher level of acceptability
That's a good way to put it, John, yeah.
Thank you.
So you want to put your best foot forward in your paper. That's really it.
Yeah. I mean, we went to school in the 60s,
Yeah.
and we learned to, like, use colorful words, like every other word in a sentence, right?
Right.
You know, so it's not a question, can you do it? It's not appropriate to do it.
Exactly. Now, another thing that you want to avoid doing is using run-on sentences. Those are sentences that just go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. They go on for lines.
Yeah.
Sometimes they go on for 6 or 7, 8 lines. It's like, wow, you have to stop and say, okay, what is this person trying to say? Break up your sentences into manageable
It was
bites.
cool in the 1800s. At the same time, we're having footnotes that took up half the page was cool. And it's because the idea is to make it readable by a even wider group of people. And I think, universities, where very few people went to university, became sort of, you wrote in this code to be able to write these very terse, complex sentences. But now we're living in a world where, okay, we're writing in a standard English, but it's a standard English that we're hoping people who are speaking English or reading English as a second language can understand.
Exactly, yes.
So we're going more now for universal communication, so
Yes, definitely.
be
All right.
sophisticated, but don't get convoluted.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to be economic in your writing. Both, you're writing about economics, but you want to be economical.
Economical writing.
Yeah,
Oh, chapter 28, be plain.
yeah, that's true.
You don't have to use 50-cent words, 75-cent words, just because 50-cent words, I don't know if you know this is something that started with Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, when he was a journalist. And he wrote these articles, and if you used these long words, they paid him more. At the time, they were paying him 50 cents for longer words and less money for the smaller words. So he would throw a lot in simply because he wanted to make more money. But I was like, Mark Twain, he's such a great American author, I want to write like him. Oh no, the reason he was doing that was purely mercenary when he was like fighting to keep from starving as a newspaper reporter. So
Yeah, and that's a good point because that lasted for a really long time up until Hemingway started writing, Faulkner started writing, no, not Faulkner because he used the long sentences too.
Yeah.
Hemingway used like really short, concise sentences and it changed the whole tenor of writing. So, yeah, that was...
and then Faulkner was still doing that.
Yeah, he was.
And he and Hemingway didn't get along, especially because there's a movie with Bogart and Bacall,
Yes,
To Have or Have Not,
yes.
that was written by Hemingway, and they gave it to Faulkner to do the screenplay, and that created like a near bloodbath between the two.
It was like mixing oil and water.
Yeah.
Much.
Yeah. So anyways, that's an aside, but in terms of writing, don't have too many separate phrases, compound sentences, unless it's absolutely necessary to make the point.
Yeah.
Is there a logical place to put a period? Put it there.
Yeah, because then your reader will get your point
Yeah.
much more easily. And another thing that will help you
It's like
when
eating
you're
an
writing,
elephant, right?
it's like one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that will help you is to vary your sentence structure. Like use 2 declarative sentences in a row, like, I am teaching this class, period. I'm enjoying teaching this class, period. Next sentence, tomorrow, comma, I will be working at home. See, I varied the structure, 2 declaratives and then one with an introductory phrase.
But the first 2 you could put together.
I could.
You
I
could,
could.
yeah.
Sure, yeah. Oh, yeah, because then but that would be a good variance too, because I had 1 declarative and then one with an introductory
But putting
phrase.
all 3 together might be a bit much.
Oh, no, that's too much. Yeah, that's way too much, yeah. So see, just to vary your structure, it's almost like writing music or listening to music. You know, you have a different theme, and then the musician introduces another theme, then maybe goes back to the other theme, and you know, it makes it much more interesting.
And it has a rhythm to it.
It has a
too.
rhythm to it, yeah. That's exactly right. So try that, and it will really help. So you want to make sure that even if you use spell check, which I hope you will, that the words that you use, they got right, that you meant that word to be right. Like, for example, there, T-H-E-R-E, and there, T-H-E-I-R. You know, they look very similar, but they're very different.
There's also some other programs out there. There's one called Grammarly. I mean, see a little ad pop up on your computer. There's a free version you can get, which, you know, does a better job of proofreading for spelling and spell check and that kind of thing than Microsoft Word does. So I would use that sometimes just to clean things up.
Now, we mentioned earlier about the sources that you want to spell out everything in your reference sheet, on your reference sheet, but the sources from a URL. Saying if you use a video, we want to know what the name of the video is. Don't just give us the URL, because
give it a name, and then you can put YouTube. You know, there's, you know, it's like the share button on YouTube. It gives you like a short condensed one. You can do that. It's fine. The title and the link.
Right. Now, two sources that could really help you as references are the Chicago Manual of Style.
Thick.
It's a thick reference book published by the University of Chicago. And
what edition is it in?
oh, gee, 18th or 19th
It
edition
says Chicago Manuals.
of Style, right?
That's still the holy grail.
It is. That's what professional editors
Yeah.
use. And that will have a lot of this information in it that we've just gone over with you.
I mean, the shorter manual of writing things that we get in school, and those are good.
Yeah.
You know, but be aware that the professional world tends to have a higher standard on these things, and Chicago style is.
That's really definitive. You can find that book at the reference desk at the library or any library, really. Another one that's helpful is called The Elements of Style. The Elements of Style. And that is a very short book, but really good.
Written by?
E.B. White, who wrote Charlotte's Web, which some of you may have read as kids, Stuart Little. He wrote a lot of children's books, but he was also an adult writer and really...
And writing books on...
writing, yeah. And that's a very good book. It's very concise, but he hits some very good points about how to write well. So you might want to look at those. In addition to the videos that John has posted that he and I have done previously.
That's where I got this thing sitting here.
Yeah. So that's it as far as do's and don'ts and some helpful hints for you as writers for your term papers and essay exams. So what I'd like to know is, what questions do you have based on everything that we've talked about thus far?